up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, with burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burnin Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy this is a Sunday we're recording, so Patreon people, you get it on Sunday. Everybody else, you'll get it when you get it. But been trying to, we've been talking about this for a while, but I got John Odermatt from the Lions of Liberty Network. He hosts his show, Finding Freedom, and as well as some other shows with Brian McWilliams. Used to be Mark Clare of the Lions of Liberty Network. He's I haven't followed up on Mark much. Is he still podcasting, doing his thing?
No, he actually well, I guess officially he's taking a break from podcasting with the Mark Clare show, but he has some other people, like some of his like fans, his patrons, like every couple of weeks they'll like publish a podcast on his feed, so he's got that going. But he's taking time off, and it's not anything bad or anything like that. He's just had some opportunities come up that have, taken his time, and just looking from I think a financial standpoint, it made sense to step away for a little bit and take advantage of those opportunities. And I hope he comes back to it, because he's a pretty good podcaster. I think he's a pretty good interviewer too. Yeah. Well,
so he started Lions of Liberty way back in the day. And you and Brian and Mark all went to the same frat at Penn State, right?
Yeah. Well, we all started, the three of us and another guy started Lions of Liberty together. We started it as a blog.
Oh, okay.
And that was like years of us, writing. And I look back and read shit that we wrote back then. I'm like, how did I even write this? This is actually like pretty good. But when you get in that habit of like writing every day, it's pretty crazy. But then, podcasting came on the scene, and like 2012, 2013 is when it started to blow up. And that's when Mark, he was the first one to start the podcast at Lions of Liberty. And, it just came down to, we're looking at, Brian and I are writing these blogs. We're getting like 200 people, 300 people reading it, with clicks. And we're looking at getting thousands of people listening on the podcast. So it just made sense to, shift the attention from putting our time into writing into talking into a microphone. Because at the time back then, like, it was crazy easy to grow an audience for podcasting, because there was just no competition. I mean, you know this. You've been in the game for a while. It's gotten ridiculous lately, especially after COVID.
Oh,
I think it's got a little better recently, but like during like 2020, 2021, like everybody started a podcast, and it was just like the noise out there was you couldn't get any message out. But I think it's got a little better now.
Yeah, it was crazy, because I started in 2019. And so like I was really kind of starting to catch my stride when my Facebook page for the podcast anyways, it hit 10,000 followers after like a year. And then that summer of 2020, it really kind of started taking off. And then like 2 weeks before the election, when they put all the filters and whatnot on, like it just came to a screeching halt. And I've been at the same follower count since then, pretty much.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. Like, talking about restrictions during that time, we've grown a pretty big YouTube following, and we have like almost 7,000 subscribers. And we're so shadow banned that we only get like 40 people watching each of our shows. It's ridiculous.
I know. I've got like 1,100 or almost 1,200 subscribers, and same thing. Like a good video will get 35 or 40 views. Yeah. Like that's good numbers for me. It's insane. But Yeah, it's pretty funny watching you guys' like career arc on the podcasting deal, because like seems like Mark kind of fell out of love with libertarianism and then went off and did his own thing. Brian's now the communications director for the Libertarian Party. And I feel like you're kind of in the same boat as I am. Like I feel like I'm still very libertarian, but I have almost no faith in the Libertarian Party, and particularly after this year. Like I know the Mises Caucus did a lot of good work, and there's some really good people in the party, but they just never cease to just disappoint. Like they had the way this particular election's going with Biden being just ancient and like it's not even really like I guess a puppet, but he's just kind of there, and that, and you're like that's the leader of the free world. And then you got Donald Trump, who I think is good on a lot of things. I don't think he knows, like I don't think he's good for being principled. Like he just has decent instincts about stuff. But if he wins again, like he's the lefties may not be wrong on the dictator part. Like it seems like they pushed him far enough now where he's like they've set a lot of precedents where he could go full dictator if he really wanted to. And like Bobby Kennedy sounded okay for a while, and until you look at his past on guns and environmental regulations, and you're like, I don't know, he could be like crazy left winger if he gets a hold of power. And then the Libertarian Party nominates this gay dude that nobody's ever heard of.
A gay dude who wants to transition your children.
Yeah.
We can get into the race in a few minutes here, but I do want to come back to the Libertarian Party stuff because I think it's really funny. I think you hit the nail on the head. So, like, Mark and I were really the first two from our group to like go into the Libertarian Party, and Mark like kind of led. I guess this was back in 2018, like this movement of podcasters, like Liberty podcasters into the party, like kind of it's not like he did the convention himself, but he kind of did. Like Tom Woods and Jason Stapleton and even Dave Smith, like kind of like that movement. Mark was one of the voices that was bringing people in, and at that time also, I was working as the campaign manager for Dale Kearns in Pennsylvania. He was running a Senate race, so I was all in back then. But for me, it just got to the point. Well, I guess it's a couple different things. From like a federal level, I realized there's no way a libertarian is getting elected. And it's not because of, actually ballot access itself. It's because there's just not enough, money. There's not enough supporters with deep pockets who are going to fund libertarians and then buy ad space on networks. When I was managing Dale Kearns' campaign, I had a news director tell me that outright, that he's not going to get in a debate because he does not even remotely match up with the amount of ad buy as the Republican and Democratic candidate. And I'm like, yeah, it kind of makes sense. So until you get to that point, and I don't think we're ever going to get to that point because there's no incentive really to get there. I mean, the corporations who have our politicians bought and paid for, they don't want to buy off another party, so they're going to do everything they can to keep it at two parties.
Yeah. So stack the deck against any major third party as far as presidential politics goes. Anyways, it seems like they kind of have found a little bit of a niche with the state and local politics, particularly local, because unless you're a big city, like nobody spends money on those races.
Yeah.
I look back because my first presidential election that I voted in was 2004, Bush Kerry. And
you voted for John Kerry?
I was the only Republican in my house at the time. My dad was running for state house on the Democrat ticket, and he served 4 terms as a Democrat. but he's where I got a lot of my politics, and he's really kind of a libertarian at heart, or at least kind of like a true maverick. Like they, they always made John McCain out to be a maverick, but he was just as entrenched as anybody. I mean, like possibly the most entrenched of all the Washington politicians. He just whatever the military industrial complex wanted. But now my dad had enemies on both sides of the aisle, and he kicked lobbyists out of his office quite a bit. He got falsely accused of sexual harassment by somebody who was like a girlfriend or fiance of a lobbyist that he had told to get the hell out of his office.
Oh, wow.
And so he was a maverick. He took on the federal government when they tried to expand a military site in southern Colorado, and he actually won because he just raised enough hell where they was like, all right, well, we're backing down on this. But so he's kind of where I got a lot of my politics from. But I was a Republican, registered Republican up until until 2016. I was registered Republican for the primary. I actually stumped for Ted Cruz. Kind of ashamed about that now. Ted Cruz is kind of the most unlikable person in politics.
Well, like if you remember back to when Ted Cruz first appeared on the political scene, he was endorsed by Ron Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And he was much more, I guess I should say, he was a lot further away than he is now from neoconservatism. And he was like aligned with like Mike Lee and Rand Paul at the time.
Yeah, and then like Marco Rubio was in that camp too, and then like Cruz and Rubio went hard neocon, and anyways, like at the time I thought he was the best candidate for the Republican side. It was Hillary Clinton, and I guess Bernie Sanders had that little uprising moment before they squashed him. But I just like I think Cruz is the guy. I really didn't like Trump, mostly because he was a Democrat for most of his life. He was like, and looking back on it now, it did work to his advantage because he understood the Democrat Party. He understood how unions worked. He's had to deal with those as a New York City, building real estate developer. Yeah, you got to work with the unions. And yeah, once you know how to work with the unions, you know how the Democrat Party works for the most part. At least how it used to. Now it's just more corporations than anything. They still have the union deal, but it seems like that's faded quite a bit. But I didn't like Donald Trump. I'm I host a pretty raunchy podcast at times, and I'm not the beacon of moral goodness or whatever, but I come from a Southern Baptist background, and there's something that just didn't strike me right about Donald Trump. Still don't. Like, just kind of a sleazeball, and I don't think the guy that's holding the nuclear football should be having to fight some sort of this whatever battle it is with a porn star. Like that seems like I don't know, make that go away before it becomes a public spectacle as the leader of the free world is kind of my gut instinct. And
it's interesting on that. So the whole thing with Stormy Daniels, like there was essentially like a payoff with the National Enquirer, right? And they bought the story to kill it, and the time limit set on it expired like right after the election, which kind of makes you think that Trump did not expect to win. Yeah. Because if he did, then he would have had to go much farther out than just right after the election.
And the whole thing's crazy, but like my just gut reaction to it all was like, this is gross, and this shouldn't be in the presidential conversation. It's I'm kind of a Hank Hill when it comes to that type of shit. It's like, just keep that thing, that's not how it should be as president, so that was kind of my gut instinct for when Trump came on the scene. So I voted like I think it was Constitution Party in 2016, and it was a calculated risk because I was in Kansas. That state was going to go Republican no matter what. So it felt like a good protest vote. And so I voted. It was a write-in for, I think it's Darrell Castle was his name. That's how much I actually cared about it. I can barely remember the guy, why I voted for him. But and then like I started the podcast, in 2019, but like this whole time when Trump was in office, I'm just like, I don't like this guy at all, but they're doing him so dirty. Like every single news story about him was negative. And then you like, they're like, he said this, blah, 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 blah. The fine people on both sides, like he's appraising neo-Nazis. And then you listen to the whole quote and you're like, oh, that's not at all what he did.
Yeah, well, let me say just on that thing, it makes me so angry, like at Trump, because during the debate, right, Joe Biden brings that up because Joe Biden thinks it's 2020 and not 2024,
yeah,
and he doesn't realize that's been debunked. But Trump, like the way he defends himself, is so sloppy. He's like, that's been debunked. He points to the moderators, that's been debunked. But he doesn't outright, because there's a lot of Americans who have no idea. He doesn't outright say, if you just listen to the whole clip, one sentence before that, I disavowed white supremacists. He still like makes it, I don't know, it almost makes me think like it's intentional that he wants to leave like some sort of fog there with it still, because it would be so easy to just show Joe Biden is lying about it. But
because he did it with the January 6th stuff. He said, if you're leaving out the part where I said peacefully and patriotically, which is like, that's the whole thing where they can't actually get him on incitement to violence because that's out there. It's recorded and it's on record that he said go peacefully. Like you can't, you literally cannot convict him on incitement to violence when he says go peacefully. Unless they just change the definition on him all of a sudden, but it was shit like that his whole term, and I say first term because I think who knows what kind of shenanigans are going to happen between now and October, but it seems like, especially after the debate, he's got a pretty clear path to win it, and if the debate's any kind of bellwether, he did a good job by staying out of his own fucking way. Like the muted mics, I think, helped him a bunch.
Well, we were talking about that on our show on Friday on Meme Wars, that maybe Trump and his team knew this all along, but yeah, this setup was like perfect for Trump because there were several times when he was trying to talk over Biden, he was trying to get his point in, and it just cut his mic. So Biden was just left the rope just to hang himself with because he can't complete a sentence.
Yeah, at one point they're like, "Sir, you have 87 seconds left," and he had like 2 minutes total. So like, he just Adderalled through what he had to say, and then it was like, "What?" 87 seconds. But before we get into the debate performance, I was really intrigued by the Libertarian National Convention this year. I was not all that intrigued by the presidential possibilities. Just none of them wowed me because nobody knew who any of them were. Like I was a Libertarian Party member for a couple of years. I followed it pretty closely. I didn't go to the Reno convention. But I went to Dave Smith's comedy show. That's where I met Brian in person. Mm-hmm. And so like I've followed it pretty closely. And then when the presidential candidates were like, as it was, coming up to the convention, I'm just like, they got no chance this year. Even if what was his Rechtenwald was the kind of the Mises Caucus guy. Even if he would have won, then what? Like nobody. I'd never heard of the guy until either Dave or one of the high highly influential libertarian people mentioning his name. But I didn't know anything about him. he was getting no traction. So I just like this is a lost cause for this election, and partially, mostly because Trump just kind of sucks all the air out of the room. But you could see they weren't going anywhere, and even if Rechtenwald would have won the nomination, I just don't see it. I didn't see it going anywhere.
Yeah, I saw Rechtenwald speak at some libertarian event in Pittsburgh where Dave Smith spoke at it. It was like in 2021, maybe. And it was a big event, a huge, hotel, convention room rented out. Dave Smith killed. That was obviously during the time when everyone thought Dave was going to be the candidate, so people were going crazy. But Rechtenwald spoke also, and he was terrible. Just so uninspiring. And to think that we went from that moment with Dave, crushing what could have been, to fast forward to this year. Rechtenwald wouldn't be any better. He would be better from a principled standpoint, who may be someone I could hold my nose and vote for from a principled angle. But yeah, the candidate now, Chase Oliver, I can't vote for that guy.
No,
I can't. It's to the point that I'm not a registered Libertarian Party member anymore at this time anyway, since I changed to Republican to vote and actually have an impact in local elections where I am. But it's to the point with Chase Oliver that he's going to do so much damage to the word libertarian with him linking libertarian to someone who supports these puberty blockers and chemical castration for mentally for children with mental illness. It's crazy. And I don't want to be I'm a libertarian and then someone just assume that I'm in favor of that also. So that's kind of where I am with the word libertarian and with the Libertarian Party. I know I don't want to speak for Brian, but I know there's a lot of people like Angela. She said it. She said essentially, hold your nose, and especially in blue states, let's take some votes away from Joe Biden, which sure, that's good, but still it's you can't build a party when your presidential candidate doesn't have a message that aligns with more than half of the party.
Way more than half. I saw that. I vaguely recognized the name because he ran for Senate in Georgia, but I didn't know anything about him. And then, within 5 minutes of just scrolling libertarian memes, I was like, oh yeah, this guy's a turd. He's an absolute turd. Yes. And
should be a picture of him next to turd in the dictionary.
I know it. And then, so you're and I live in Nevada, so it's going to be hotly contested. And I'm just the Democrats can't have another term. I know that. And I'll roll the dice with Trump. I don't like the guy, but he's so much better than the alternative, and the libertarians are. I did enjoy I enjoyed Donald Trump speaking, just because he's 100% entertainment 100% of the time. I think it's kind of awful for the country as a whole. My ideal would be an Eisenhower type, at least demeanor wise, policy wise. I'd like Ron Paul, but demeanor wise, I want somebody like Eisenhower, a serious individual. And Trump,
yeah,
I can't take him all that serious,
Yeah, I interviewed Jeremy Kauffman a few weeks ago, right after the convention, and we were talking about Trump and, is there a libertarian case for Trump? And I mean, there's not really a libertarian case for Trump. There's not. He's not a libertarian. But there is a case for a libertarian to vote for Trump, if that makes sense. But he was talking about, the way Trump thinks. And I agree with this. Trump, libertarians are very principled to a fault, dogmatic. They want everything to align and they want to be consistent on everything.
They're
to the extreme, to the point that it's not even reality. And Trump is on the exact farthest you can get from that, where he doesn't care about, he doesn't have any principles. He doesn't have any morals. He just wants, what is good for him, really. So
Right.
what you need is somebody in his ear, like a Vivek Ramaswamy, who actually is pretty good on,
For the most part,
ideas of liberty, and can kind of plant those seeds there, because otherwise someone else is going to get in his ear and steer him in some direction.
Right. And, like he listened to Rand Paul quite a bit during his first term. And that's good. Rand Paul, like there's a lot of people that still want Rand Paul to run for president. And I don't, because I don't think he'd win. And he's in a excellent spot. And I'm also against term limits just because of people like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul. Like,
me too.
I want them in office until they start getting corrupted by the swamp. I want them right where they're at. They're doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, let's talk about term limits for a minute, because I really haven't. I think I've evolved. I used to be like in favor of term limits until I really came to understand, like, these politicians are bought and paid for by corporations. So all it would be is corporations just pivoting who they're paying off. It wouldn't necessarily make anything any better. They would just find different people to pay off instead of the same person over their entire career.
Well, and how the incumbency works, like you have such an advantage being an incumbent that, like, if we get a good, let's say like Justin Amash wins his Senate seat in Michigan.
It's not going to happen, but yeah.
Well, let's say it does. Like, he's probably there for a while, like a pretty good while. And that's a good thing, because there's stuff I don't agree with Amash on. I think he had a little bit too much of the Trump derangement syndrome when he was in the House. Sure. But that being said, he's still better than everybody except for Thomas Massey in the House. And if you get him in the Senate, where like the Senate has more power than the House does as far as an individual member, it's a very exclusive club, one of 100. I want him in there as long as he's still principled. That's Mike Lee's the same way. I don't agree with him on everything, but keep him right where he's at. He's doing good work. Rand Paul, Thomas Massey. There's like, I don't want, like my dad was term limited after 4 terms, so he served 8 years in the Colorado State House, and he didn't get near as much accomplished as he would have liked, but he got a lot done. He led the fight to revoke Colorado's I forget the official term, but is essentially we revoked our consent to build, for the federal government to build anything other than hospitals and post offices in the state of Colorado over the military expansion site. So I mean, that was a huge step, and he led it through. And like, I would have been, it'd have been really good for the state of Colorado and for him just to be able to stay there for however long he wanted to.
Yeah, I'm trying to look up, because I think, did the primary already happen in Michigan with Justin Amash running as Republican? Because he was polling way behind.
I'm not sure.
Anyway, the poll I pulled up, he was like at 8%, and the guy in first was like at 20-something. So I don't know when it is, but it doesn't look good for Justin Amash to. He might have already lost, but
he put himself in a bad situation because he went pretty hard against Trump, voted to impeach him the first time, and if you're gonna win the Republican primaries, you probably at least better be neutral on Trump.
Yeah, and he did the thing where he went independent instead of becoming a libertarian.
Yeah,
which I think it's really not a big deal, and I really don't care that much about it. But it would have been cool for him to do it just from the perspective of it'll be the first libertarian senator, which would have been pretty awesome. So maybe you set some sort of precedent. It probably wouldn't have mattered, but I think that was pretty dumb that he didn't do that.
Yeah, he's interesting guy, but I think he's made some pretty fatal flaws. I don't know if he if he gets elected statewide like that anymore. Just, I think he burned too many bridges during the Trump stuff. But hard telling. But what was your thoughts about the Libertarians inviting Trump to their convention?
Yeah, I thought inviting Trump to the convention was the best thing the Libertarian Party has done in a long time. Not because Trump is great or anything, but like, why would you not want the most the guy who is the most popular, has the most name recognition, maybe in the entire world, not most popular, but the most name recognition in the entire world, in Donald Trump, who's running for president? Why would you not want him at your convention? So that's a no-brainer for me. The people who are out there saying like, that's terrible, they invited Trump, he's going to take the focus off of the Libertarian candidates, that's just stupid, because you should be able to take whatever you can, then energy from it, and then direct some of it towards people looking at the Libertarian Party, which people did. Like, if you look like Google searches for libertarianism and Libertarian Party went way up. So I thought that was a great move by the party, both to invite Trump and Biden. Biden turned it down. RFK Jr. was there as well. And I thought at the end of the day, like, if Trump does get reelected, during his speech at the Libertarian Convention, he said that he would free Ross Ulbricht. And if he does that, if Trump gets reelected and pardons, commutes the sentence of Ross Ulbricht, that will be the greatest accomplishment by the Libertarian Party ever. Yeah. Just because of the significance of it, because of the significance of that conviction and kind of the ties to Bitcoin. And, if you think back to like when it happened with Chuck Schumer at the time, I remember Chuck Schumer speaking out and really demonizing Bitcoin, and it was really like sending a message that this type of shadow banking and this shadow commerce isn't going to be acceptable. So to overturn that, especially in today's age when it's obvious Bitcoin isn't going away, I think would be pretty massive.
Yeah, and so everybody who's not familiar with Ross Ulbricht, he was the creator of, I think if I remember right, it was
Silk
like
Road.
Yeah, it was called Silk Road, but it was on the dark web. Like, you couldn't just type it into a browser and get to it. And it was
which I still don't really know what that means. But
I don't know either. Yeah, I'm
not afraid to sound stupid.
So take all of it with a grain of salt, but essentially it was like Craigslist for the dark web, and you could pay with Bitcoin or whatever. And he got convicted for like human trafficking or something along those lines, because there was like kiddie porn and hitmen and like a bunch of crazy stuff supposedly on this website.
He wasn't convicted. The charge that people always point to is the hitman charge and the murder. He was never charged with that. Those were things that were kind of brought up on the side in the trial, saying like, this is the guy who's associated with this, and then nothing ever came from it because it didn't happen. He didn't. He didn't kill anybody. But I mean, the one thing that is, there's a lot of crazy things about it, and I don't have like all my notes up in front of me from when I've done interviews with his mom, Lynn Ulbricht, on it, but there were 2 federal agents who are in prison who worked on the case, who tried to steal like millions of dollars, and maybe did steal and then got caught, millions of dollars of Bitcoin through the Silk Road. It was just a super, super shady operation. You had, government agents who were infiltrating the Silk Road, playing characters, trying to fool people.
Were they FBI?
I think one was FBI.
I'd say that sounds like classic FBI shit.
Yeah, and they weren't allowed to like put that forward in court either. It wasn't allowed to be submitted. So the whole case is crazy. And, like my stance on this, and I remember, I wrote about it many, many years ago. Like, you have to almost expect to get bit by a snake when you're, essentially you're Ross he's a agorist. He's someone who, came up in the school thinking that in order to change the system, we're not going to change it through politics. We're going to change it through the black market. We're going to change it through, black market commerce. And you have to know that if you're going to do that, be it through creating a Silk Road black market marketplace where people can transact drugs or whatever they want to, you have to know the risk you're exposing yourself to, because there are still laws. We might not agree with those laws, but there's laws out there.
They're on the books, and they will enforce them if you're causing a problem for them. Yeah.
So he took a great risk, and his mom admits that, but he did not deserve two life prison sentences plus 40 years.
Yeah.
Nobody was harmed. There's no victim named. There's no murder charges associated with it. So that's the crazy part. I think he's learned his lesson by now, so I think we can let him out.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely needs to be let out. He's I view him a lot in the same lines as I view Trump, as I view Julian Assange. Like, I feel like if I knew Julian Assange personally, I probably wouldn't be a big fan of the dude. But
I've heard he doesn't like to shower, so yeah.
Yeah, so I just like in general, probably not a big fan of him. But what they convicted him on, and and I can't even fault the guy for finally just saying, all right, just calling it quits, like taking the best deal you possibly can, where he doesn't get any further jail sentence. They set a really bad precedence for freedom of speech, free press, in the United States by convicting him. I mean, like that's a really, really bad precedent. Because the stuff that he released, while it might have been national security information, it was stuff that the American public needed to know. And that's the job of a good media outlet, is to tell you the shit that the government doesn't want you to know.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. And the crazy thing that we forget with Julian Assange is he wasn't like ever imprisoned for any of, that stuff that he released. It was on some bullshit drummed up, like rape charge that wasn't even a rape charge. It was like a charge
that later got dropped too.
That he took off like a condom in the middle of sex and didn't tell the girl that he took it off. Like that's why he was being detained, or that's why it's just so crazy. Yeah, so it's kind of weird that he ended up, I guess, pleading guilty to some form of that in order to get a plea deal. But I guess, at the same time, once you see an out, then you take it.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm glad he's out. Like there's no love lost for the guy. I don't like I said, I'm not particularly a big fan of his, but the reason he was imprisoned was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. Donald Trump, same thing. I'm not a big fan of the dude. He probably fucked a porn star while his wife was pregnant.
Although he said during the debate that he did not have sex with a porn star.
That's true. So if you take him at his word, he didn't. I don't know how much of that I believe. But that being said, like what he was convicted of hinged on him committing a crime that he was never convicted of. And you're just like, so you told the jury to not even unanimously decide that he was guilty of a prior crime that they don't have jurisdiction over in order to convict him of a felony.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that conviction holds up on an appeal.
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think absurd. So. Like even a goofy state like New York with crazy people on the bench still, I mean, they just vacated a bunch of the Harvey Weinstein stuff because the way they used witnesses was completely against what was supposed to be allowed in in a courtroom. And same thing with the Trump stuff. Like, I think he probably did whatever they accused him of doing. I'm not saying that he's innocent of what they're saying, but like what he actually did is only a crime because you changed the law for him, and then you coax the jury in a direction that should not be legal.
Yeah, the Harvey Weinstein stuff is interesting. Like, I have not looked into that case at all. I just assumed his guilt, and he probably is guilty. But the one thing that's interesting, hearing this stuff, that there was some nefarious things happening during the trial, I do wonder if he was used as sort of a scapegoat as to, let's pin all this on Harvey Weinstein and let all these other, shady characters, get away from it. Let him, take all the bullets and everything else. So there might have been an element of that. I don't know. I don't think Harvey Weinstein is a good person or anything, but
right.
It just goes to show you, like, the justice system is so messed up in this country.
It's so bad.
And
it's so bad.
That I did a podcast for years called Felony Friday on the justice system.
Mm-hmm.
And people can end up in prison for decades for drug charges where there were no drugs. It's just some guy who says, I saw this guy with this amount of drugs, and then all of a sudden that's the drug charge. That's called ghost dope. So that's how it works in this country. So
you either cop the plea or you spend as much time fighting it, and who knows how much money. And a lot of guys are like, well, fuck it. I'll do my time and be done.
Exactly.
That's almost a better option for them. And it's terrible. And while I'm not a huge fan of Trump, you can't do that. This is America. That like you were like rapidly turning us into a banana republic type situation where like that we just don't do that here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just, the precedent that was set with that is they're just laying the groundworks for a dictator at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're almost there now with Biden just handing out student loan forgiveness whenever he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Trump will do the same thing, I'm sure, if he gets elected. I mean, I'm in the same position as you. I'm in Pennsylvania, which, like Nevada, very crucial state. Yep. Really, I think from the looks of it, it looks like Arizona and Nevada and Georgia look to be pretty solid Republican, pretty solid for Trump. I think when you look at Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, that's where it's going to be decided in those three states. And there is that weird scenario where, what is it in what state is it that has the one county that gets?
It's Nebraska and
Nebraska and New Hampshire. Or
Maine. Yeah, they both have they divide their electoral votes by congressional districts. So it's like Omaha, Nebraska. That district votes Democrat, but the rest of the state votes Republican. And I think Maine's the inverse, where there's one district that votes solid Republican and the rest of the state votes Democrat.
Yeah, and so there's like a decent chance, like a non-zero chance that you get a 269 tie, which would be just complete insanity.
Calamity. It would. I don't even know what would go on there.
Well, like they couldn't put either of them as president. Like you couldn't do that. Like they'll have to find some sort of there have to be some sort of agreement, which would probably even worse. You probably end up with like Mitt Romney or something.
Right. You'll have Nikki Haley as president.
Oh God, don't say that. Oh,
she'll be signing bombs to everywhere in the world.
That's exactly what would happen. I can't stand Nikki Haley. She is the absolute worst. I had Cliff Maloney on my show. He's doing like he used to be the president of Young Americans for Liberty, but he's doing the Get Out the Vote in Pennsylvania, helping to chase ballots so Republicans can actually, try to actually compete with Democrats for mail-in ballots. And he said if Nikki Haley is Trump's VP, that he will totally stop working. on the campaign. Step away.
That would make me not vote for him. I'd probably sit it out. I'd write in Thomas Massey probably, and that would be what I'd do.
I'll tell you what, though, he would probably get more votes because suburban housewives, they love Nikki Haley.
That's true.
They do.
That's true.
They love her. It's terrible.
It's crazy. So we're hot on off the heels of what they're calling a president or a historic presidential debate, where like if you followed Joe Biden at all, even like kind of loosely, the guy's not there. But it was on full display on Thursday, like full display. That guy is incapable of doing anything besides eating ice cream.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess a lot of people don't have experience hanging around people in their late 70s, early 80s. Like I have, kind of with, family and relatives and things. And you just kind of understand, like, that's what happens. Like, and once you get to that point, once you hit that wall and you start to lose it a little mentally, it doesn't mean like the next day you go off a cliff, but you don't like over the long haul effort, you don't like recover from it. You might have like some good days, some good moments, but that might last for a decade. You might be, but it's always going to get a little bit worse. Like it's never going to.
The best you can do is manage. That's Like it doesn't improve. And there's good days and bad days, but like if you track it on a chart, like it's a slow downhill creep.
Yeah. And it just blows my mind. It shouldn't, but like, I don't know if you watched the debate and then watched the after panic on CNN, but it was so crazy. Like, I didn't know what CNN was going to do when it went back to their, spin table with the 12 Democrat commentators and the one Republican commentator.
Like 1 week removed from them telling us like, oh, all those videos that you see of Biden stumbling and looking old, like that's just fake.
Yeah, that's all AI.
Yeah. It's deceptively edited. You're like, okay, but I watched this for 90 minutes and the best line of the night was Trump was like, I don't know what he said there at the end there. And I don't think that was the, I was hoping for some more Trump fireworks just because I'm a fan of Trump off the cuff, but he was very restrained, but that was it. I mean, that was like the perfect response. Like, I don't know exactly what he said right there. I don't think he did it either.
Oh, that was Trump's, I thought that was the best moment of his debate, other than and it slipped by me at first when he called him Brandon. Did you hear that?
Oh yeah, I did hear that. And that I was like, I didn't realize it until I was watching, or I was listening to like a watch along, and they brought it. I was like, that's a good little moment there. That's a good little Easter egg.
Yeah. So Trump was on his game from a Trump standpoint. That's not to say that Trump was like actually did a good job debating. He didn't answer really questions at all.
Well, especially there at the end, he just didn't even try to answer the questions. He'd just go do whatever he was going to say anyways.
Which I get it to a certain point. Like when you're debating, like his narrative was the border. Mm-hmm. Biden let all these people in. They're bad people.
Brought it back to the border unnecessarily for one of his worst moments. He brings up the chick that got raped and murdered by a migrant. And you're like, why? Why would you mention that? Why would you mention that?
Yeah, the whole thing was just it was ridiculous. Within the first like 10 minutes of the debate, it was clear that Biden just didn't have it. It was just a senior moment. It wasn't going to be good. And I'm like, oh boy, buckle up. And then when they finish the debate and they go to the CNN table and, John King's there and he's holding up his phone. He's like, from the moment the debate started, there's been Democratic strategists calling me, freaking out. It's like, how is this possible? How did people not know this was like a very likely scenario to happen? It just doesn't make any sense.
Where have you been for 4 years? Like they were talking about it during the Democratic primaries in 2020. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he's the candidate and you're not allowed to talk about that anymore. And I watched a 3-minute montage of major media figures just talking about how he was like Joe Scarborough was like, this is the best Joe Biden we've ever seen. Okay. And now like I'm on the Drudge page and it's new pollster Trump +5 poll 72% want him out. And they got the dark Brandon picture up there. Staff hid decline from public. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was obviously they were.
And that's on the which is interesting because Drudge hates Trump.
Hates
like
him.
Yeah, Drudge totally flipped, the articles he's been stealing. Matt, let's talk about Matt Drudge for a minute. The guy made a webpage, a shitty, terrible webpage where all he does is take other people's articles and he's what? Multi-millionaire?
Yeah. Yeah, he just rewrites the headline and puts the original link to the story in. And yeah.
It's kind of ridiculous, really.
He got early in on those tech bro deals where
you learned how to make a blog pretty early, I guess.
You don't have to do really anything, but you can make a bunch of money off it.
But like the thing that's happened recently with the whole Biden thing, which it's crazy. This is going to be like a stupid roller coaster all the way up to the election, because you had the debate happen, there was the freak out, and then the next day he comes. Well, we can't skip the most ridiculous thing. Right after the debate, there's like a rally where Jill Biden comes out and freaking like loses it. Like there's the still pictures of Jill Biden like pointing at the crowd, shrieking. After she says to Joe, like, Joey or Joe, you did a good job. You answered the questions. And he's standing there just with his mouth wide open. But
what's the ice cream?
Where's my ice cream, Jill? So that happens. Then the next day he's in North Carolina and he looks like a different person. But yeah, with old people, that can happen. You have good days and bad days. And now all these Democrats are saying, he's fine. He's totally fine. He's great. He's better than ever. It's like, no, he's getting old. Like that's going to be like every other day. It's just ridiculous.
And then it's not an old man that just walks to the mailbox every day and that's his daily activity. No, he's the fucking president of the United States.
Exactly.
It was so dumb, but like it could not have gone any better for Trump. Like it just like Trump played it well. All he did was, and like the rules worked in his favor. Surprisingly, like they never work in a right of center candidate's favor on those debates, but they worked perfectly to Trump because you just let him talk. You can't interrupt him and look like an asshole. And then you get your little quips in where you can. And he played it right. He didn't go overboard, didn't really demean the guy for being old and decrepit. He just like, I don't know what he said. Just, like it was as far as that goes, like optics go, like it was Trump played it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have. Like, there were a lot of people who were saying, like, Trump is in a position here where this debate's set up, that it's not set up for him. He's gonna be exposed. It was I agree with you. It was a perfect setup for him.
I could not believe that they agreed. The Biden people agreed to that, unless they really wanted him out. I don't know, but even so. Like I don't see Gavin Newsom being the savior. Like he's got a bad enough track record in California. Like he's not going to win, close Rust Belt states. I don't think.
No, I think the Gavin Newsom thing is interesting. I'm just looking at the betting markets now, and just today, so there was a debate and a huge drop for Biden. Then it ticked up in the next 2 days after, and now today it's just gone off a cliff again. So I don't know if something else happened today, if they're just realizing it's setting in the reality of how bad that debate was.
They just realize they can't spin it now. They're just like, we've spitballed it. We brainstormed everything and we got nothing.
We used the whiteboard. We put our big words down. Our Harvard words.
What was that? Do you follow Matt Taibbi's podcast that he has with Walter Kern?
I mean, I've probably listened to it maybe once, but I don't follow it.
So they've been talking here the last couple of weeks about this this board game that was developed by a DARPA contractor, and they send it out to like all these big corporations, and essentially it's just war gaming the 2024 election. And so they're recruiting for spin people, because like their scenarios are like the leading candidate that we want to win, there's a rumor going around that he might have dementia. Well, that seems a little bit on the nose.
Yeah.
And I'm just picturing that. And they, like they have their conference call with all these people. They sent because they were sending it to like all the Fortune 500 companies, and then like all these consultant type companies that do essentially spin political, political back channeling type stuff. And I'm just picturing that conference call, and then it's like, we got nothing. Like that shit's out there on record now. Like, we got nothing.
You can't pull it back.
No.
And to get back to Gavin Newsom, I think people are looking at the Gavin Newsom thing wrong. Like, so after the debate, Gavin Newsom was on CNN giving his interview, carrying Joe Biden's water harder than ever. And what it is Gavin Newsom wants Joe Biden to stay in the race, and he wants him to lose, because that clears Kamala Harris out of the way. Yeah. The worst thing for Gavin Newsom would be if Joe Biden wins. There's no way in hell Joe Biden is finishing a second term. So Kamala Harris will become the president, and then Kamala Harris will probably win because she's a black woman. She'll win 2 terms, and Gavin Newsom will be freaking much older and might never get his shot at being president. So Gavin Newsom wants Joe Biden to stay in the race and lose. That's the best thing for Gavin Newsom.
I really want the Democratic Party to show their true colors and just be like, sorry, Kamala, white men talking here. Let's put Gavin in. Like I just want them to go revert straight back to what politics actually is. And you're like, bunch of rich white men talking here. Like, why don't you wait outside? We're gonna actually decide shit here.
Yeah, well, they pushed her out there after to respond to Joe's terrible debate. She was wearing like a $10,000 Tiffany gold chain around her neck. So,
oh geez, I haven't checked on that lately, but I think they know that at some point somebody's going to step up and be like, hey, we tried this whole woman of color thing, and now's not the time. We need somebody serious up there.
I mean, I don't know what would happen. Like, I don't think they're going to pull Joe Biden off the ballot just because it's too late. I don't think they can
at this point.
Like, feasibly they could. They have the mechanism to do it with
it's
the convention
possible,
still,
but I think from an optics standpoint,
especially when they're running as the party, as like democracy's on the line, and then they're going to overrule the democratically elected, nominated candidate. It just, it's not good optics. So the only way it would happen would be if Joe Biden would die. Then what happens? It would have to be Kamala. Like, they couldn't. There's no way they could go out and put Gavin Newsom over
and
Kamala.
Not safe. I mean, to save face, you'd have to go Kamala.
Yeah.
Because like LBJ stepped down before the voting started, right?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
Don't ask me history. I'd have to look that up.
Because I know he stepped down, but I don't know if there were primaries that had actually taken place at that point. And I don't see any of the Democrats getting assassinated because they're not a threat to power. Bobby Kennedy might have been an actual threat to the military-industrial complex. Whoever's on the bench for the Democrats is not a threat.
No.
Like even Bernie Sanders wasn't an actual threat. If you looked at how he's performed after they stole the election from him, he endorsed Hillary. He'll make some kind of milquetoast taste comments about the Israel-Gaza situation, but he's all on board with Ukraine.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders is a piece of shit, man.
Oh, he's like a piece of shit.
He's one of the biggest pieces of shit in politics because he has enriched himself off the backs of people who actually believed that he was some revolutionary.
They believed
that
in his
he was
bullshit.
all about changing the system. He's not. He didn't give a crap about any of that.
Oh, he's no better than Castro or Stalin, except he wasn't. Unlike Castro and Stalin, Bernie Sanders is a pussy. So,
that's true.
Like Stalin and Castro weren't afraid to seize power. Like back when the communists used to be tough. They're like the communists used to be a force to be reckoned with because they knew what they were doing. Like when they took that whole revolution shit seriously. Nowadays it's just gays for Gaza. Oh. Okay. Go over to Gaza, queers. Let's see how that works.
See how that works out. Yeah. Yeah.
You'll find out. You'll find out. But yeah, kind of piggybacking on all that stuff. I have been increasingly concerned over the past, say, 6 months or so. Like whoever's actually running shit in Washington really wants this war with Ukraine or with Russia. Like it seems like all the shady, weird shit that's happened over the past 8 years or so it all leads back to Ukraine somehow. Like the first Trump impeachment over, the perfect phone call or whatever was about an arms shipment to Ukraine that happened. Supposedly was delayed a little bit, but it happened. Hunter Biden stuff all has ties to Ukraine. Lloyd Austin, who was on the board of Raytheon before becoming Secretary of Defense, Raytheon's made a shitload of money off of the war in Ukraine. And then here recently, they revamped the selective service system that automatically enrolls, I guess it hasn't passed yet, but it's in the NDAA, which will be voted on later this year, which has to pass. So it's probably gonna pass through. The Senate amended it to make it mandatory, not just for males 18 to 26, but for females 18 to 26. I don't know how that affects the transgenders, if they get out of it or not. I wouldn't think so.
They have to register twice, actually.
Because, if trans women are women, then they would have to register as well, I guess. I don't know. Which honestly might not be a bad idea. I've been pitching this idea for a while. Shane Gillis took my bit and made it a lot funnier. But the most terrifying thing you could think of would be a bunch of trannies charging over the top of the trench, just like 6'4" dudes with raging boners and double D tits. It'd be fucking terrifying if you're a Russian soldier.
They wouldn't know what to do. Yeah, when you were naming everything shady happening in Ukraine, the one thing that you left off was like the alleged COVID labs too that were there.
Yeah,
so
remember
there's all kinds of
that was a conspiracy theory, and then turns out, there not only were there labs there, but there was like 26 of them that we were supposed to shut down when the Soviet Union fell, and we just never did.
Yeah, there's all kinds of shady shit that has happened in Ukraine. The whole country has been operated as a huge money laundering, situation for the U.S. government. And it's, the whole thing's disgusting. I know you and I are on the same side in this, I think, where essentially what they're doing, the U.S. government, the Biden administration are saying, we don't care as many young Ukrainians, can die as needed to be in order to have this show of force against Russia and protect whatever the hell, or destroy evidence of what's been done in Ukraine. But when it comes to the draft, like, I just don't know if I really believe there's going to be another draft. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Hopefully I'm right, though, because I don't want there to be another draft.
I don't either. I hope I'm wrong. I just...
Yeah.
If you look at it, so like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, all these wars that we've started since 2001, as bad as they were, and like you're about my age, like, so we know, like, this is our generation of men that got destroyed by these stupid wars.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't real wars, like against a real military. And Russia may be a paper tiger. I'm not discounting that fact. But even so, if we go to hot conflict with Russia, there's always the threat of nukes. But say you take the nukes off the table, it's still trench warfare, like World War I style, with modern machinery. It's fucking terrifying when because I've watched and listened to a lot of people that have, pretty intimate firsthand knowledge about how all that stuff is working, and it just sounds horrifying. Like, it just swarms of drones. I think it was Eric Prince was talking to Tucker Carlson the other day, and agree with the guy and what he's done. Put that aside and just say, like, let's talk about his professional knowledge of the situation, which I would put pretty high. The guy knows how military and war works. And he was saying, like, Russia, when they invaded, their reaction time to call in artillery was about 20 minutes. And they've shortened it down to like 2 to 3 minutes to call in artillery, like accurate artillery. And so you're just, it's a drone and artillery warfare is what it's devolved into. And one of the huge issues with the Ukrainian military, outside of the fact that all of their good fighters are gone and they're just like scooping people off the streets now, their biggest problem is they're still essentially a communist country or Soviet country. Their entire warfare doctrine is essentially the same as it was in World War II, where you throw men, take a couple yards, dig in, entrench yourself, wait for reinforcements, and do it again. And they're going up against a country who fights the exact same way, because they're essentially the same people. I mean, I know there's differences in like Western Ukraine versus Eastern Ukraine, but essentially it's Russia versus little Russia that's fighting right now. And the big brother has about 5 to 10 times more people that they can throw at it. And they have a legitimate military industrial base, unlike Ukraine.
Yeah, and they're fighting not in their own territory. I mean, they're fighting in Ukraine, so they're not losing, the civilian casualties. I don't really know how many civilian casualties there have been in Ukraine, but
you don't hear about that as much anymore now that the Israel-Gaza thing popped off.
Yeah, you really don't. So I don't know if that's like, sort of giving shade for that or what the deal is, or maybe there's just not, maybe it's not happening.
And the people that we're supporting, we don't know how many of them are dying. That's like the Ukrainian military doesn't release their statistics. And I think earlier this year, he said something like 30,000 Ukrainians, and most other estimates put it closer to like a half a million.
Wow.
And so you're just like, that's a whole generation of Ukrainian men gone.
Yeah, and of course he's going to lie about it, Zelensky, because he wants to continue to get more money. And it's funny, not funny, but Biden during the debate, Trump called out the amount of money going to Ukraine, and Biden's like, well, it's not money, it's weapons. The money's going to our, military industrial complex.
Right.
But it's
And at some point, though, like, you can have all the weapons in the world, but if you don't have anybody to shoot them, they are no good to you. And that's where Ukraine is like rapidly approaching that level.
Yeah, and they can't go on forever. Like there is a timeline where it's just over, and Russia has offered some some peace deals. They offered the one way at the beginning that Boris Yeltsin shot down. So I don't know where it goes. It does certainly seem like that they want this thing to continue on in perpetuity. What I worry about is, and I don't necessarily think this is going to happen, but China getting involved, something happening where I'm reading the book right now, 1 Second After, which is about the aftermath of an EMP being detonated above the United States. EMP being electromagnetic pulse. So essentially, they detonate a nuke or several nukes above an area, and it sends out a pulse that fries all electronic equipment, cars, everything. So you're essentially just set back to the Stone Ages.
Yeah,
which I would be more afraid of that than an actual nuke, because at least in an actual nuke, you're dead, so you're not dealing with it.
Well, there's that, and then there's so I've been reading a lot of Jack Carr ever since he started writing, and that guy's very, very knowledgeable. But he had Annie Jacobson on, who's also really I really like her books. And she wrote, I haven't read it yet, but it's on nuclear war, and so she goes over the EMPs, but his take on it was like take kind of the nukes out of the situation, because both sides know what that means. But Russia's electronic warfare is as good, if not better, than ours. And so they could take the entire grid out without actually having to drop a nuke in the sky and cause an EMP. They could send a computer virus over. Kind of looks like maybe what happened with the whole Baltimore container ship thing is it looks like maybe that thing was hacked and they steered it into a bridge. But if they have the same type of capability with electronic grids, or electrical grids, and you can just take out the entire eastern seaboard, that does a lot. We sent waves and waves of bombers over into Germany during World War II, because they always like to bring it back to World War II. But we weren't even trying to hit troops necessarily. It was like taking out ball bearing factories and stuff that made the German war machine go around. And if you can take out the electrical grid and shut off, especially like say in Arizona or the Southeast, where a lot of these missile factories are, you can take that out for indefinite amounts of time like that. That slows the production. And then, the Russian army can now march forward because they're not calling in artillery because they don't have it.
Or you might already have some terror cells in this country right now because the borders have been wide open.
So. There's that too. Yeah,
who the heck knows?
It's fucking terrifying. And if we do end up in like a legit hot war and not this proxy stuff that we've been doing, like go back to World War II and look at how it was on the home front. Like it wasn't a walk in the park. You had meat rations, you had gas rations, you had sugar rations. With all the technology that we use nowadays, particularly with drones, like you're going to have microprocessor shortages. So they might just commandeer your phone and like, hey, we need these chips. We need them for missiles. So, sorry about your bad luck. And that's when that happens, it just happens. You can be against it all you want, but it's just going to happen.
Yeah, the government has the monopoly on violence, so it's not a lot we can do about it at that point in time. And things could get pretty weird. Things could get pretty weird pretty quick in this country. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but it's a threat, man. Like I'm a risk manager for a living, and these are real risks that everybody should be looking at and thinking about. Like, what would you do to protect your family if this were to happen? At least have some sort of plan in mind. You don't have to like think everything through and have 5,000 days of food stored up in your house, but you should at least be able to survive for 30 to 60 days.
And think about where all this fighting is going to take place. It's going to be in Ukraine, and name one city besides Kiev, and tell me that this is worth our boys going to fight and die over, the American public having to sacrifice. Like I have a nephew, one of my older sisters, boy, he just graduated. I don't know if it was basic or if he already went to like officer candidate school but either way, he's a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army. Whether he's going to be deployed or not, I think he's wanting to be a chaplain. So chances are he might be. And but either way, like that shit kind of hits home. You're like, well, I know plenty of guys that had to go over to Afghanistan and Iraq, and they were fighting a bunch of militias. They were fairly well armed, and they had a reason to fight, but they're not fighting the Russian military. Like the Russian military is kind of inept, but if you look at their track record, they win wars for the most part. They don't win them in the most glorious way. Usually they just throw wave after wave of dudes against it. And even if we do beat them, like that's not going to be a pretty fight.
Is the Russian military even trying to win this war against Ukraine, or are they just trying to prolong the war and drain the United States of resources?
In the early days when they had the convoy going to Kiev, like it didn't look like they were actually trying to take it. If you actually listen to like military experts and not hacks, but like people that just analyze military tactics, and like this looked more like a feint so they could shore up their defenses in the south and the east, which is what they really wanted, because as we both know, but the American public for the most part doesn't. This war has been going on since 2008. This is and all the fighting's been done in that same region. Like this is just a bigger escalation of the same war.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, so if Trump does somehow win, and I don't know, I kind of go back and forth on this. I almost think that the elites, whoever is behind the scenes, with the money for buying off these politicians, the corporations who own the politicians, I kind of think those types of people want Trump to win, because it'll be almost like a reset button on everything that's happening with Israel, with what's happening with Ukraine and Russia, and it gives them a chance to kind of reorganize the chessboard, and get people in Trump's ear to facilitate that. But so I mean, I probably, like you said earlier, you're probably going to vote for Trump. I'm going to vote for Trump too, just because Biden is so awful, and imagining the Democrats getting the executive branch, getting legislative branch. I mean, it would be terrible if they could just jam through whatever woke bullshit they wanted to.
Yeah, because even if it gets struck down in the courts, it's going to take years for that to happen. Yeah, and if Biden wins, there's also a very good chance he's going to get to nominate the next Supreme Court justice too. Right. So and I think the court is safe for a little while, but you look at like Clarence Thomas is old as fuck. Alito is old as fuck. Elena Kagan's old as fuck. Honestly, like I've said it many a times, like Joe Biden's greatest accomplishment as president was getting us out of Afghanistan. As ugly as it was, he got us out. Donald Trump's like greatest lasting legacy was putting 3 younger conservative members of the court on the Supreme Court. So like that.
Yeah, and I'm not a constitutional expert, but there was a pretty big ruling on Friday with that Chevron. Yeah. Which it seems like, from what I understand, based on people much smarter than me, that this really will take away a lot of the power of the administrative, managerial class in, interpreting legislation the way they want to, and just kind of enacting it however they see fit. So I don't know. I don't know how this plays out or how things roll back or, how it kind of shrinks government, but it seems like it could potentially.
It seems like it. Yeah. So from what I understand, like the Chevron doctrine was that the courts just deferred to the federal agencies for their expertise, because when you're dealing with a lot of these cases, you're dealing with a lot of minutia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the courts just deferred to the expertise of the federal agencies until the defense side made a good enough, I guess it'd be more the plaintiff side, I guess. Whoever was bringing the case against the government, unless they made such an overwhelming argument against the federal agencies, the judges just deferred to the courts, which
I think like the term is like, as long as the agencies had like a good faith argument, like something that wasn't just like laughable, then they would just defer to it. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, even if it was complete bullshit, if they made a good enough argument, the courts would just defer to the agencies. And now that I don't know exactly how that changes, but it seems like a step in the right direction. And so, yeah, chalk it up in the column as a win for Trump, and honestly as a libertarian case for Trump, because that when you come with from a principled standpoint, it's a lot of these regulations and federal agencies making the case that it's definitely a win for libertarians in that case, and it's a nerdy, wonky type of win, but that's what libertarians love, is nerdy, wonky shit.
The nerdier the better. Yeah.
We're all autists here, but I guess to wrap it all up, what's the political temperature in Pennsylvania? You're in Pittsburgh, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a more conservative area of Pennsylvania.
So the way Pennsylvania is, you have Philadelphia, the eastern side of the state, and the surrounding counties, which are all very progressive,
like deep
liberal,
blue, right?
Deep blue, yeah. Then you have Pittsburgh, which is in Allegheny County, which is blue, and Erie, which is up north by Lake Erie, which is blue. And then in the middle of the state, you have State College in Center County, which is, that could kind of go either way, but because of the college, mostly I think it's mostly blue. The rest of the state is red. But because of the populations in those areas, make up so much that it's enough to push the election to Democrats. I mean, I honestly don't know. Like the polls I've been seeing, which kind of surprising, have showed Trump like up 2 or 3 points. But the Senate race in Pennsylvania between Bob Casey and I think the guy's name is Dave McCormick, I think. Seems like a pretty decent candidate. I don't know a ton about him, but he doesn't seem like a lunatic for a Republican. But Casey's one of those Democrats who like never takes a position on anything. You only see him every 4 years, when he's up for re-election. And he has a family name, his father, his grandfather. There's a line of Democrats. So Casey is still pulling up like 2 or 3 on his Republican challenger. This is a state where John Fetterman won when he couldn't even talk.
Fetterman seems better now that
he does seem better now. But yeah, so I guess my point being, this is a state that will vote for an empty vessel, a literal corpse.
Yeah.
So
he literally was. Oh, yeah. That was terrible. But he was going against Dr. Oz, which once again, like he's not a serious candidate, doesn't seem like. But then again, neither is Lauren Boebert, and she just won the district where I grew up, my dad's district now, and like where a lot of my good friends are. And I didn't know if she could do it, but I honestly I don't blame him too much, because she is a dipshit, and they all know that. She's she's a white trash bimbo, if you will. But
she moved districts, right? She was somewhere else.
The Democrats were sinking a shitload of money into her a challenger.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2020, she only won the race by like 500 votes, something like that. And so she moved essentially from the west slope of Colorado to the eastern plains. And but there's a little bit of like the Denver urban sprawl that affects that. But for the most part, it's a solid Republican district. I know those people, and I don't know exactly what to say how they feel about her, but like I said, I don't fault them for voting for her, because who knows where these other guys, like my dad said, I think Schellenberg or something like that was like the main challenger to Boebert, and he liked him, but when it comes to national politics, she she's got name recognition, and you also, as dumb as she is, you know how she's going to vote. She's better than most when it comes to voting record, even though I don't think she understands anything about what she's voting for.
Yeah, it's funny enough, in that district, I actually know one of the guys who ran on the Democrat side in the primary.
No shit.
John Pedora. He moved out there from Pennsylvania, and he's a really nice guy. I had him on my old show, Felony Friday. He has a pretty crazy story where he overcame addiction. And he has some libertarian leanings, but he's a progressive, and he's taken on some of those talking points. But he's a really good dude. So I was following his campaign against Boebert, and he had some interesting commercials, on Instagram that I was watching, where he like went into the movie theater, where she was sitting when and he's like doing his ad from there. But it was kind of funny. But yeah, I don't know who beat him, but yeah, he lost to some other Democrat.
Yeah, I don't. She's a weird one. I get why they voted for her, because they didn't know the other guys, but on that same note, I don't understand it, because she's literally just a white trash bimbo, and it's kind of amazing that she's been able to. I know it. They compare her to Marjorie Taylor Greene a lot, and I don't see that comparison. I think Marjorie's after we call her Large Marge on the Death of Fun podcast, but
there was something that Boebert posted on Twitter a few weeks ago or months ago, where she was like washing her feet in the sink, while Congress was in session, and she's like, washing my feet. Like, what? Why are you posting a picture of this?
She's so dumb. She's hot though. Insane. But I think Large Marge is out for power, and don't be surprised if she's the Republican candidate in 2028. Really? I think that woman is shrewd. She's very much on the Trump side of things, where she knows where she's not popular, and she's not even going to try there. She's gonna just talk to the base, and she's shrewd. She's a worker. Like they stripped her of all the committee assignments her first term, so she just sat in front for every vote, and would have she'd be like the one objector if they were calling for unanimous consent. And you're like, what? I respect that. I may not agree with her on everything, but I respect that. Like she's learning the system, doing her thing, and I think she's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the coming years. One last thing: are we going to World War III?
I don't think so.
I hope not.
Not in the traditional sense. We might already be in the middle of World War III for all we know, with everything happening in the background.
I think if we do see hot war with Russia, it'll be before the election, because there's that statistic. It's politics is a lot like baseball. You get these obscure statistics that nobody really knows what they mean, but if you follow the game, it does have an impact. And one of those is we've never elected a non-incumbent during in the middle of a war. And if they are indeed rolling with Joe Biden, they're going to throw everything at the sink. And remember, these are the people that made up a case against Donald Trump to start the whole Russiagate deal.
But I think with that stat, the reason for that is because, people didn't want to shake things up because they were at least, comfortable that the people in charge weren't going to, fuck up the war. I think people now are afraid, that Joe Biden, it's obvious he has no idea what's going on, and it's a shadow government that is waging these wars. So either you're going to openly vote for that to continue, or you're going to vote for a guy who might be a douchebag and an asshole and have no morals, but at least he's a strong man who is not going to get pushed around on the world stage.
Right.
So.
Like there was rumors that he told Putin when he was in office that if he invaded Ukraine, that we were going to nuke Moscow. So
yeah, I saw that.
I don't know if that's true or not. I would kind of lean toward it being somewhat true. And also, if that's going to be our guy that's projecting power outward, I'd way rather have that than Joe Biden. Yeah. But that being said, if they're that desperate, they've lied us into plenty of wars before, and I wouldn't put it past them to do it again. And they just gave the okay to send military contractors over there, and I don't know. We had the Lusitania, we had the USS Maine, we had the Gulf of Tonkin incident, we had weapons of mass destruction. They've used all sorts of lies to get us into war, and if they're just relying on the Trump is so bad, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I see these people as very desperate, and it's particularly if they're going to stick with Biden. I don't know. Analytics plays a role, and we've never not reelected a president during wartime. So
analytics do play a role, but like in baseball, there is an element of clutchness. There's some things you can't measure. You can't measure heart. You can't measure when the president, the one who is the incumbent, is on a slow, accelerating, possibly mental decline.
I agree with that 100%. I don't think their analytics are necessarily right in this situation, but that doesn't mean they won't try it.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't put anything by anybody at this point in time. A lot's going to happen, I think, between now and November. And hopefully it's nothing, where people get hurt or anything like that. But it certainly scares me that it could be. Yeah.
It's crazy. The possibility is on the table. And then once you get drug into a war, it's really tough to get them out or get us out, and Afghanistan lasted 20 years. Iraq has been over 20 years now, even though it's kind of not really a war anymore, but we're still there. We're still there. They've told us to leave, and we're still there. Vietnam is always the popular one where people, rose up and said enough's enough, but that still lasted almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really tough to get out once you get in, and it's not gonna, at this point, it's not gonna take much to get us in.
Yeah. And one last thing, just to really bring this episode full circle here at the end. The title of the episode having to do with Libertarian Party, and I was just talking to Mark Clare earlier this week about me kind of distancing myself from the party, and I'm like, you know what? I should have realized that I should take a step back from the party the first time I saw a grown man waving a dildo in the air in the front of a libertarian convention.
Yeah.
I should have realized, you know what, maybe this isn't the place for like rational discourse.
Right. So I went to Freedom Fest in Memphis last year, and that's kind of like Libertarian Convention light, except there's a few more like conservatives that go there. But looking around, I was just like they had an Afro man as one of their featured speakers, and I like Afro man. He's fine.
Yeah.
But not who I want to see when we're talking about like serious political conversations. And there was that one convention where there was he wasn't fully naked, but he like stripped down to his underwear and was dancing on stage. And now, we have this, I guess he's good on guns, Chase Oliver. So, I mean, that's a start, I guess, but he also like has been on the record in favor of children using puberty blockers and whatnot. And these drag queen story hours, directed towards children, which I don't give a shit about the gay, the trans stuff. Like, whatever, do your thing. But the kids is a different. Like, no, you can't do that to kids. Like that's the one
abusive
thing that we all used to agree on.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a red line. I mean, it's one of the few like absolute red lines that I have that I'm not moving an inch from it. I will die on that hill.
Yeah, same here. I just like, you can be good on guns. I'll applaud you for that. But no, I'm not going to vote to give you any sort of power if you're cool with cutting a kid's dick off because that kid says that he's a girl now. Like, I'm not okay with that. I never will be.
And it's crazy. It's crazy. This is a conversation. Like, what is happening? How is this a conversation today?
Yeah, so my son is 7 years old and really smart, like kind of on the spectrum type of smart. Like, so he's a libertarian, you're saying? Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much a libertarian. But like very, very smart. And he was talking to me the other day about how he wanted to be a cowboy and a baker and a professional baseball player when he grew up. And I support him in all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that like probably none of those are going to happen. Maybe the baker part. Maybe the baker. And if he came up to me and said like, I think I'm a girl now, I'd be like, well, no, you're not. Like, I don't care how you feel. You're just not. You're not a girl. That's not how this works. And no matter how much you wish, and no matter how many drugs there are out there for you, you are not a girl, and you never will be. You don't have the parts. I work in animal husbandry. I'm very well aware of how biology works. And even though a cow and a human are different species, biology and physiology is very similar across species. Mm-hmm. There's differences, but shit kind of works the same. Mm-hmm. And it just, that doesn't work, buddy. Sorry, you're not a girl. And he's never said that, thank God. But yeah, and if somebody was going to try to convince him, an adult try to convince him that yes, he was, murder is not out of the question there.
Yeah,
I'm not going to say I would do it immediately, but it would be on the table from the get-go. And
it's in some of these states like California where the teachers are allowed to do that and not tell the parents, which should be criminal. That should be the crime. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just so upside down. It's like, how the hell did we get here?
It's stupid. Yeah, I live like 20 minutes from the California state line, and California, I've said on record many times, is the most beautiful place in the country. Like, it as a landmass, it is absolutely gorgeous. I see why people move there. I see why people that have lived there forever with normal points of view still continue to live there, because it's that great of a place. But the people running it are retarded. I mean, just absolutely retarded. And yeah, and so we have one of those type of people running for president under the Libertarian Party ticket, and I just can't support that. You know, like the episode's Libertarian Party is gay. Well, they literally are. They were putting up a gay dude that's pretty much all on board with all this trans stuff. He was pretty much all on board with all the COVID nonsense. He claims he was, not for government intervention, but I don't remember him speaking out against the government restrictions at the time.
The thing that he says, and we don't have to go on for long about this. I should jump off soon anyway. It's getting late, but I do want to say one thing on this, because you have the Chase Olivers and those types of left libertarians who, like, they say their stance on COVID at the time was like, when it comes to mandates, that corporations, companies, businesses should be allowed to mandate the vaccine. And then they said that's the libertarian viewpoint. I totally disagree with that, because we're not talking about a free market vaccine. You're talking about a vaccine that was made via government funding. The virus itself was created from government funding. So you have a government-created virus, a government-created vaccine, and a process that the approval for it was not only government-created, which it always is, but it was a special process just for that vaccine. And you're going to tell me that a business under pressure to mandate it and then doing it is somehow acting in a libertarian way? That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's the same way when, they talk about Twitter and Facebook and all these other social media companies being, well, it's a private company. They can do what they want, but they're not doing what they want.
Exactly.
They were heavily influenced by the government. And so much so, like we found out through the Twitter files, Matt Taibbi is a fucking hero for his work on that. But like the head lawyer for Twitter used to work for the federal government, for the FBI, and then just like seamlessly transferred. And not like with a 5-year gap. No, it was like I quit the federal government and now I'm working for Twitter in this essentially the same position. And you're like, well, that created the back channel. And now, like you guys have experienced it. I've experienced it. Like you're rocking along, doing your thing, trying to make a go at this podcasting thing, making a business, and then it just like shuts you off. And like your ceiling is now here, and you can't go above it.
Yeah.
It's retarded. And yeah, it's guys like that just went along with it. And I can't support that. Like I said, I don't care how many good things he has to say about guns. When it comes down to it, if he gets any pushback on the gun control issue, I don't believe that he'll stand up to it.
I don't think he will either.
So yeah, I don't have any faith in the Libertarian Party. I'll still check in on him. I like Brian a lot. I think Brian's doing some good work there. I think Dave Smith is still doing some good work.
I think Dave's distanced himself from the Libertarian Party.
Honestly, I don't blame him. He kind of should. Like he rolled the dice and it did not pay off for him. But until they prove otherwise, I don't trust them. And anyway, we are politically homeless once again.
You know what? Being politically homeless, it feels like I'm right at home, though. If that makes sense.
Same here. Like I'd rather be there, and at least I can talk shit on everybody, and not like, oh, at least I didn't vote for that guy.
Exactly.
So anyway, John, thanks for your time, man. This has been fun. I really enjoyed the conversation, and everybody that listens to Finding Freedom, you'll be hearing this, and I'm glad you're listening. So. Check me out. I'm at Move Your Ass on Instagram. Go follow Lions of Liberty, Finding Freedom, and Mean Age Daydream. I really think Brian needs to do some workshopping on his podcast name.
Mean Age Daydream
seems a little too niche. I didn't understand it when I first heard it, but anyways, it's a good show. I like Brian. Does good work, and you guys have been putting out good content for a long time, so keep it up. And yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks, man. This was fun.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody. And until next time, move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Is just a gather, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right.